This was always my dream. I've loved the sailor uniforms ever since I was a kid. My father served, and I also dreamed of the fleet. I began my service in the Baltics in the Leningrad region, in the city of Mamonovo, where I went through my training. I was trained as a deck-mounted tower electrician for above-water craft. After I completed my training, I was assigned to the Black Sea Fleet, and I served there until 1993. Once I'd completed my service, I went to work in the military commissariat, and then I was called for again. I finished my warrant officer training in Kotovsky until I reached the rank of assistant military commissar. In 2004, I left due to the expiration of my military contract, and in 2007, I again re-enlisted to the fleet.
Please tell us about 2014. You were leaving Crimea. How did everything happen?
Our commander betrayed us. He tricked us, took us to the pier and said, "I've saved the boat, I've saved the crew, that's it, we're surrendering." I didn't surrender. I returned to Odessa, where they offered me the tugboat Krasnoperikopsk, which they later renamed to Yany Kapu, and I served as its commander.
When did you learn about the November crossing? Why was it necessary?
I learned about it the same day that it was to occur. I can't talk about the task that made it necessary at the moment because it's not yet time.
Igor Voronchenko, the commander of the Ukrainian Navy, told us during an interview that the tugboat went to the crossing because a maritime pilot was to be picked up there.
Yes, we were supposed to pick up a pilot and with the pilot head out to the Sea of Azov.
When did you understand that things weren't going as planned and that the pilot wouldn't be there?
We arrived and waited the entire day for the pilot. In the evening, they told us that there wasn't going to be any pilot. Then we received an order to go to Odessa. We came right up to the so-called border. And then they started to ram us, follow us, and afterwards, as you know, they opened fire. 3 sailors were injured. The ramming started even in the morning, when we were just starting to the cross, despite us sending messages that we were crossing, that we have a point to meet with a pilot. But no one paid attention to that on the Russian side.
Let's talk about courts in Crimea. What do you remember? How did it go for you? What was the mood like? Did you have a lawyer?
What was the mood like? Quite negative. There was no physical force, but the whole day we sat in one hall under guard. They fed us in the evening and asked a few questions in the presence of a public defender. We invoked Article 51 of the Russian Federation. That is, we refused to testify.
What interested them the most during the first questions?
About life in Ukraine. They were most interested in how we lived, because they see on TV and read that our lives are bad. I said that we live pretty well. They took us from Kerch to Simferopol. I met my lawyer at court, Azamatov Aidar Bilyalovich. He told me that the defense's position, and we were covered by the Geneva Conventions.
You were in uniform then. When did they take them from you?
I was in uniform until I arrived at Lefortovo prison. There, they took them and gave us their penal uniforms, and that's all. After that, I didn't see uniform until I got home.
We heard from your lawyers that you and the other sailors were sent to different detention centers?
No, we were all at Lefortovo. Only the injured guys were first in Matroskaya Tishina prison on rehab, and then they were also transferred to Lefortovo.
Before you went to Moscow, where were you held in Crimea? Before court and after, before you reached Moscow?
They took us to jail in Simferopol after the court hearing.
How long were you there?
A day.
And then you were told that you were being transferred?
They didn't tell us anything. They just put us in transports, took us to the airport, put us on the plane, and we only saw from the plane that we were near Moscow.
What can you tell us about the detention center? How did they treat you in Moscow? What did they tell you there? What were the cells like? And how many people were there? Who were you put in with?
The cells were for 2 people, but we were separated from each other. Over the course of 9 months, we only saw each other in the transports on our way to court. That's when we saw each other, and in court. We shared cells with random people, some with politicians, some with businessmen, some with oligarchs. For example, my first cellmate was a politician, and then the next was a terrorist.
And what did you do all day? Was there any yard time?
Of course. Every day we had yard time for an hour in the fresh air. Only it was surrounded by 4 walls and a chain roof, pulled tight.
Some of the sailors have said that they were given the ability to play sports. What did you do in general?
Not exactly. We improvised. Some squatted, some lifted. Some tied water bottles with water to use instead of weights. That's how we exercised.
What other activities were there?
We read books. There's a library there. Every 10 days, they gave out 3 books. Once you finished a book, you required the library to come, and once it had, you gave the books back. The first 2 months were hard to get used to, but then a man can get used to anything.
Did you have any idea when you'd be released?
I never stopped thinking about when all of this would end, but to hope that it would be today today or tomorrow was useless, because it's a difficult thing, maybe the hardest thing when you're imprisoned. No one even asked us a single question in that prison.
About the Moscow courts, please tell us how the arraignment went. As far as we could tell, the court's decision was already made.
How can you ask us questions if we're relying on the Geneva Convention and our prisoners of war? For us, these courts were illegitimate. They were fake, only used to lengthen our imprisonment.
We understand that your wife came to one of the court sittings.
Yes, my wife and my daughter.
Please tell us about this. What did you talk about?
We almost didn't talk because they didn't give us the chance to talk. We saw each other from a distance. It was very nice on the one hand, very nice that they came. On the other, it was very difficult to see them and not have the chance to talk. Of course, we smiled. We wouldn't show that we're weak and sitting with our heads in our hands, would we? No. I always went to court with a smile because I didn't do anything wrong. I went with a smile because I don't consider myself to be weak. I'm a strong person.
Did you receive letters?
I received several from my wife, one from my mother, and one from my mother-in-law. I didn't get any others, though I know now that a lot of letters were sent from countrymen from schools. We were sent letters from everywhere, but the Russians didn't hand them to us.
What can you tell us about the volunteers? They worked hard to help you with things and groceries.
A huge thank you for the support.
They worried a lot and are still worried about you.
I know. Victoria Ivleva was once again arrested. About Ivleva, I'll say just one thing. Her care packages supported me greatly. She came to passing packages many times. I often think about how they stood at the walls and waited for the one moment where they can pass along things to me. This was a lot of work, of course. A lot. And it's very sad that they're suffering now because of us.
These moments when you were in court, in detention, what did you think about that crossing? If you could go back in time, would you still go?
I did my duty to the country. If they had told me then what was going to happen, I would have still gone.
We know that Pavlo Grib and Alexander Kolchenko were told to write requests for pardon. Did the same happen to you?
No.
When did you learn about the prisoner exchange?
When I was woken up at 4 a.m. and told to gather my things, I didn't even know why or where. They just said, gather your things.
What did you think about at that moment?
I didn't think about anything. I just gathered my things. I thought that maybe now it's over. Because by their orders, they don't have the right to wake us up from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or bother us or anything. That's why I understood that we're going somewhere. But where, this I didn't know.
And when did you understand that it would be to Ukraine?
When I saw our plane at the airstrip.
You've been in prison for 9 months, and a lot has happened in Ukraine in that time. There were elections. Did you know about or follow the events in Ukraine? Did you know that there was a new president?
I knew there were changes. There was a TV there. True, they don't show everything. But I heard that our president, Volodymyr Zelensky, spoke on the phone twice with President Putin. I didn't have a television at that point, though. I heard it on the radio. There was only one radio station, Mayak, which I listened to all day long to hear anything about Ukraine. Mostly, they talked about Ukraine and America all day long. I want to say that I respect our previous president and our current one. Our current president, Volodymyr Zelensky, saved us from there and helped us return home to our families.
Did you know that the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea made a decision?
We had hoped the decision of the tribunal would free us. But as we saw, nothing works in the Russians. Not European courts, not tribunal decisions, not peace, nothing.
Now about the exchange. Did you know who you were being traded for and who was sent back to Russia?
No, they didn't tell us anything.
Have you read or seen any news about it now? Everyone was happy that you returned, but we didn't know about who would be sent to Russia until the last minute. But now we know that Kirill Vyshinsky and Volodymyr Tsemach were sent.
They told everyone about Vyshinsky, but I only learned about Tsemach here in the news. No one knew about the exchange list.
How long will you stay at the hospital?
Until they let us go. I don't know how long that will be. Once we can leave, we will probably go to Odessa. And there are procedures. We'll have to write about who will continue to serve and who will be released.
Who did you talk with first when you returned?
The first person I spoke to was the president. He told me, I wore a bracelet with your name with honor, and now it's your turn. My daughter gave him that bracelet, and he wore it until I returned.
What did the commanding officer of the Navy say to you when you met him?
He congratulated me on my return. He asked if I will continue to serve. I answered that I will. Then he said that we should be getting a new tugboat, and if I wanted to serve on it. I said yes.
Are you sure that you'll remain in the Navy?
Of course. There's no one else to do it except us.
Has all of this made you closer with the other guys?
We had good relations before this. I've served with most of them before in Crimea. And a few came to me when I was commander of the torpedo recovery ship Kherson. Most of the guys on the tugboat served with me on the Kherson. Then they came with me to the tugboat.
What did you learn from this whole episode? Maybe it changed you somehow?
I learned to treasure those who are close to me, my family, my country, and my people.
There has been a lot of speculation about why you went there, that you were framed. Do you harbor any ill feelings on that front?
Remember, I'm a military man. I'm used to fulfilling orders. That's all. The cutters were supposed to go from Odessa to Mariupol or Bryansk to guard our borders. Previously, our ships passed without problem, and we expected to pass without incident. But they didn't give us that chance.
We know that on November the 25th, 2 Russian ships hit each other. Are you aware of this?
I don't need to know that. I was part of it.
Please tell us about it.
I can't talk about it until it's made official.
There was news from the lawyer and from Ombudsperson Lyudmila Denisova that during New Year's celebration, someone came to your cell without identification, without identifying markers, and tried to talk to you. Was this true?
Yes.
What did they ask? What did they want?
They wanted to talk about life in Ukraine, about the crossing. I didn't talk to them because I didn't have a lawyer present. Without a lawyer, I couldn't talk to them. I was relying on the Geneva Convention, and that's where our conversation ended.
You said yourself that your wife asked you to resign from service. What was your reaction?
How can I react to this? I love her a lot, but service is service. I know my work. I'll wait for the end of the war. Once the war is over, I'll head home to sit, as the saying goes, on the oven. I think that right now, every able-bodied Persian should take up arms and defend their government.
Were you provided with medical assistance in Moscow?
They provided us with some, and there were follow-ups and systematic care. They brought me pills every day because I have diabetes. Consuls passed me medicines that I used. I had 12 operations on my head. The climate wasn't right, and I developed furunculosis. They cut them out. Only the scars are left.
We spoke with others who said that they missed out on a lot and needed to catch up. What are your thoughts and plans?
I have a lot of plans. I don't even know where to start. I know one thing. I need to start with my grandson. Because he waited for me. My wife waited, my daughter, my mother, my sons. Everyone waited. And so I'll start with my family.